The Allison-engined Mustangs, for all their limitations, were regarded by their pilots with great affection, and so long as they were used within their restrictions, they were very able. They were also a pleasure to fly, responsive and urgent but very controllable and well behaved. Reports on the plane from 1941 on had constantly enthused about its performance when its engine was delivering adequate power. And in retrospect, it seems inevitable that the virtues of the airframe would suggest to someone that the plane be given a better engine. The engine that was eventually suggested in mid-1942 was the Rolls-Royce Merlin, the same engine as the illustrious Spitfire. After trial installations carried out by Rolls-Royce had proved very successful, North American's engineers went to work on the installation, and the Mustang underwent some changes in housing the engine in an extremely tight-fitting, streamlined nose, giving the plane overall better lines. The propeller now had 4 broad blades to turn the power into thrust in the thin air of higher altitudes. The carburetor inlet above the engine had been repositioned below the propeller. The fuselage had been strengthened, and there had been refinements to the radiator and its ducting. The new plane proved a very different proposition to the earlier models. Form anything in the sky. Its top speed had gone from 380 miles an hour to 440, and its rate of climb and reserves of power for emergency maneuvering had increased. The Mustangs were startlingly improved and ready to re-enter the war as a more important factor. Testing of the new planes, though thorough, was quickly completed, and with a new factory in Dallas adding its output to the Inglewood plant, in 1943 Mustangs were pouring onto the battlefield in great numbers. The output from the two plants were given different numbers, planes from Inglewood being P-51Bs and the identical product from the Dallas plant becoming P-51Cs. The Mustangs had always had large fuel capacity, and the combination of this capacity and their miserly demand for fuel, half that of either the P-38 or the P-47, meant that the P-51 had a marked advantage in range. As the British too were to appreciate, combining this economy with their new power and high-level ability, they were the obvious choice for the role of escort to the massed bombers operating against Germany. The impact of the Mustangs on the campaign in Germany is reflected in the comment of Goering at Nuremberg, that when he looked into the skies over Berlin and saw Allied fighters shepherding the bombers to their deadly work, he knew that Germany had lost the war. The planes he was referring to were Mustangs. Though now acknowledged as the Allies' premier escort fighter, the Mustangs retained their old punch as ground attack aircraft, and given that they were already deep over enemy territory escorting the bombers, it was logical to set them loose in ground-hugging high-speed attack on transport and Luftwaffe targets as they made their way back to their bases. On the 4th of March 1944, for the first time, Mustangs supported the bombers on the 1,100-mile round trip to Berlin. This long-range capability of the Mustangs was, from then on, exploited routinely in penetration missions against the tottering Reich. In their activity in the European theatre, the Mustangs flew 213,873 sorties, with 4,950 German planes claimed as shot down and a further 4,131 destroyed on the ground. The aerial victories account for almost half the total claimed by all American units for the European theatre in the period after P-51 deployment. On the other side of the ledger, there were 2,520 Mustangs lost in combat, shot down, lost because of mechanical failure, or rarer but still a factor, lost because of pilot error. In this sequence, which we have slowed to quarter speed, the combat cameraman has captured a pilot's mistake, and we see the horrific result as two Mustangs on a ground attack sweep collide and plow into the ground. The P-51 outperformed all the piston-engined fighters which the Luftwaffe was able to deploy against it, and was untroubled in maintaining its supremacy in the air until the emergence of the German jet and rocket fighters. Even against the Me-262, which Hitler had finally accepted as Germany's remaining trump card, the P-51 scored victories, normally by ambushing the jets at landing and takeoff, or by overwhelming them with sheer weight of numbers in the dogfights around the bomber groups. 1-to-1, the Mustangs were totally mismatched against the jets, which were over 100 miles per hour faster than them. Fortunately for the Allies, the Nazi leadership had lacked the common sense to back the jets in their early development, and they were deployed too late in too small numbers to stalemate the decisive conflict in the air over Germany.